Okay, so let's take a look at how you can create a backup recovery service vault. So for that, we'll log into Azure portal. Next thing, we will be checking out a resource, or we can also go for services. Either one of these option would work. Here you can try recovery service, and here you see recovery services vault, right? So here we'll be first creating the option for our vault. So what we can do here is we can click on create, right? So here you can take a look at option, right? Here we will search for backup center. Now once we check our recovery service vault and add our subscription and resource group, we will name our vault. So let's name this my default, and let's go for networking. Here we can allow public access from all networks and pick the tags for sorting and organizing. Then I can simply go for review and create. This should create one recovery service vault, right? From there we will be exploring some of the options, right? So this being one of the easiest way to set things up, we'll wait for it to get into deployment. Here you can see we have our deployment started, so it should show up the deployment page. So once it loads, we will wait for it to show us the go to resource button, right? So here let's take a look at our options for variety of backup policies. Alternatively, we can also use this for backing up our virtual machine, right? So let's take a look at what we have. Now let's think. So here we can see the vault being created. Now you have a variety of options to backup, right? So here, as you can see, few things to look for is clicking on backup. When you do that, it will open the backup specific page, right? Like I mentioned, it gives you option to backup virtual machine, Azure file share, SQL server, and SAP HANA. So SAP HANA seems to be a recent option, and you can back that up too. Now here another thing, if you have any other workload, say on Stack Hub, then options will change. If you have options in Stack HCI, then also the options change here, along with the on-premise, which is your own server separately out of cloud. So there too you can use it for variety of backups. So let's assume that you maintain SQL server outside Azure and you want to back it up, then you can select this option, same for virtual machines or file and folder. So this being one of the common that is used for backup, right? Then comes system state and bare metal recovery. So for those who have dedicated instance, they can use that option for bare metal recovery, right? Then there is also one more thing, which is Microsoft Exchange and SharePoint. So SharePoint backups you can take through this option as well. I assume that you have SharePoint on your own network and you can use that for backup. Same with Exchange, you can host your own and then connect to this on-premise option for backup, right? So you can take a look at few options one by one. For example, if with Azure you have SQL Server and SAP HANA, so let's select this. You will notice that it will change your options. So currently we don't have any databases within SQL Server in Azure VM, so we can't go for that. We can search through Start Discovery, but there isn't anything, right? So the option for configuring would be reduced as well. Then there is also SAP HANA in Azure VM, which would be also not discoverable, and that will limit our options. So you need something in order for backup. There is Azure file share. So if you have your own storage account and where you have this specific file share enabled, then you can back that up, right? Then comes your virtual machine, which I mentioned, so can be backed up. At the top there is option for storage replication set to geo redundant, so that will be thing you have to watch, right? So you can click on configuration and change that to local, right, and then save, so that your charges will be local redundancy, right? Just wait for it to finish. Once saved, make sure to wait for it to release. Okay, now we are ready to go. Now here, this was related to backup. Let's say you have a website, right? So if your website is hosted through virtual machine or through, let's say, a specific flow that you follow for hosting that VPS or VM, and it makes use of Hyper-V or VMware, then you can recover through one of these options, right? Now let's also take a look at your backup items. So let's say I have already made some backup, and it will be sorted in one of these types like we previously checked: virtual machine, then SQL in Azure, HANA in Azure, and storage files. It will be sorted and you will be able to click on this and access them. Currently everything is 0, so nothing worth checking, right? Then replication also follows the same part. Currently we have none, so we can start with replicating existing resources like Azure virtual machines, then Hyper-V machines, and VMware to Azure. So these are some of the options you have with replicated items, right? Now if you check the backup policies, then you will notice that you have some of these options for you to explore, right? And you can add your policies there. For example, hourly log backup for SQL Server, and default policy for your virtual machines, enhanced policies you can add from here as well, right? So always use this option whenever you take backup or wish to try or force recovery, right? So these are some of the things you can do. Now there is a backup report options, so that's a good option to explore for those who want to keep an eye on their backups, right? So here currently it will search for my subscription and also check the workspace, and based on the collected data it will form the backup reports, right, which we can save and explore further, right? So pretty much everything I have covered. You may want to take a look at other settings like identity, networking, properties, which are kind of common for most of the options. So for example, identity wise, you can use Azure AD. So try and explore if that's allowed. You can keep the status on, and then you can check for system assigned identity as well as user assigned one, right? You may also have to save the changes every time you make, right? So we have, like, so once we do all those changes, we can also take a look at this option to add user assigned identity. Here you can see my subscription and managed identity here, right? Next thing is networking part. We may have to allow access from all the IP address, or if the data is protected, you can limit it to private access with certain IP range. So like this you are pretty much setting up things for recovery and backup. So hopefully that helps you to set up your backup.